Hey folks, I'm Chris and I'm your Commander Mechanic here with another tune-up. But before we dig in, I wanted to remind everybody that we're now officially affiliated with our Canadian retailer of choice, Harry Tarantula. If you want to help support the channel by picking up singles or sealed product, head on over and use the promo code CMDR Space Mechanic at checkout. Now let's see what's in the workshop today. Viewer Neptune writes, "Here's a not very serious deck that I think you'll have fun looking at. Basically, the idea is to generate as much salt as possible, steal my opponent's stuff, cast their spells, and shut them down. There's land destruction, extra turns, and stacks effects. Basically, it's a deck no one wants to play against. Thanks, I guess, for submitting the list, Neptune. This certainly is a piece of work. You've got everything in here short of infinite combos to ensure your opponents never want to play with you again. Let's shift that. Let's steal spells and permanents, but the real nasty stuff, let's leave that at home. It's okay if you have a group that's aware that's what you're doing, but if you're playing with strangers, let's not ruin their day. Now, obviously you can play Commander however you want. That is up to you. But fostering a gameplay environment that actively makes people not want to play, that's detrimental to the overall state of the format. That's not how I would encourage this build personally. Sen Triplets is a very unique commander, but one that fits your theme of taking your opponent's spells. For 5 mana, this Esper artifact creature chooses one player to shut down during your turn, allowing you to cast their spells in addition to your own. Firstly, Sen Triplets is an artifact creature, meaning they're doubly vulnerable to both creature removal and artifact removal. This is important to note since people will be trying to remove them to protect their hands. We'll want to address your commander's necessity to the deck as well as staying power. Second, Sen Triplets doesn't trigger until your upkeep, meaning you need to wait an entire turn cycle to get any benefit from your 5 mana investment. If Sen Triplets doesn't make it back to your turn, you've spent 5 mana for nothing. And the next cast is 7 mana, then 9. That is a lot to spend on a commander. Lastly, Sen Triplets doesn't use the same formatting as Thief of Sanity or Gaunty Lord of Luxury. You need to use the actual mana required to cast the spells you're stealing. So it's going to be important to be able to generate mana of each and every color reliably. When it comes to the deck's core theme of stealing spells and permanents, you've got some great pieces in. Thief of Sanity, along with Mnemonic Betrayal, lets you snag cards from hands or graveyards, and Hostage Taker lets you get artifacts or creatures from in play. All fantastic choices. Gaunty is the king of stealing stuff from your opponents, and is an effect that we may be able to reuse with maybe the right additions. You've included a few clones that help you get what your opponent has. Clever Impersonator and Phyrexian Metamorph are flexible and let you get whatever you want, and Spark Double can clone only creatures or planeswalkers you control, but that can still make you 2 Sen Triplets, 2 Gaunties, or 2 of whatever you've cloned with one of the other options in the list. Some of the Pillow Fort or Stacks pieces you've included are good base level additions. Propaganda and Aura of Silence are good includes in just about any deck. And you've got a solid suite of counter and removal. Counterspell, Render Silent, and Drown in the Lock are all sweet counter spells that will help you protect your game plan, while removal spells like Mortify, Swords to Plowshares, and Merciless Eviction help us get rid of what we need to. But even with the great versatile pieces you have included in the deck, you've included a lot of cards for the sake of being unfun. That's not what I'm about when it comes to deck builds, so I'm going to recommend removing a fair bit of this stuff from the deck. You mentioned specifically including land destruction for the sake of making your opponents upset and slowing down games. That's not fun for anyone, yourself included. That's not fun for anyone, and I'm surprised you'd even find that fun. Your deck doesn't include anything in the form of a threat that could stick and win the game if your opponents had no lands, so the game plan really is just to be unfun. Cards like Armageddon, Global Ruin, and even Rising Waters are okay in decks where you can make use of them. Get a good board state, then wipe away all lands so no one can stop you. In a deck like this, it'd be ideal to run an abundance of artifact mana, then destroy all lands so that you can freely cast spells. But you're only running 8 mana rocks. That's not enough to reliably use this game plan. So removing these options is going to be the best for the health and well-being of everyone at the table, yourself included. Stasis is another boogeyman, along with Overwhelming Splendor and Mana Breach. Cards just meant to piss people off and slow the game down with no synergies or purpose. These are cards I'd include in decks if they had a purpose, a combo or a way to break symmetry, but here they're just mean-spirited. As I mentioned when reviewing the commander, you need to be able to generate mana of every color in order to reliably cast what your opponents are playing. That means we need to re-examine your mana base to add in more lands that make any color of mana. I'll also want to up the land count because 33 lands with a curve over 3 is going to leave you mana screwed pretty regularly. I recommend looking at some reliable 5-color producing lands. I'll stick to budget-friendly recommendations for now, and in upgrades, we'll look at pricier options. Exotic Orchard, Mirrodin's Core, and the Vivid lands are all inexpensive additions to help generate mana of any color, even if the Vivid lands do come into play tapped and only have 2 uses. Shimmering Grotto, Unknown Shores, or Painted Bluffs are nice budget includes too, even if it only filters mana rather than making mana. These can all help us cast anything in our opponent's hands regardless of what color they're playing. Along the same lines, I would never build a Sen Triplets deck without Chromatic Lantern. Having the versatility to just tap your lands for whatever color you'd like is amazing in this deck in particular. I'm not normally a fan of 3 mana rocks, but this is as close to a must-include as it gets. Now, for nabbing more cards from our opponents, there's a lot we can insert in place of some of the unfun cards that I'd not personally keep. Agent of Treachery is a great curve topper, and since you're going to be stealing and casting your opponent's spells and permanents, this can be a late game draw engine. And since it's right there in the name, Notion Thief is a solid include. You've got Narset Parter of Veils in the list with no wheels, so at least it's playing fair. But if you're going to be stealing, then this thief should be in your party. One of my favorite newer thieves is Thieving Skydiver. Being able to get a 2/1 flyer for 2 mana, and for just 1 more additional mana, you can grab a Soul Ring or a Mana Crypt. Or you can pay more and grab the biggest and best artifact on the battlefield. Perfect. Another personal favorite of mine is Nightveil Spectre. Similar to Thief of Sanity, it provides you with a more random option to stealing and casting cards from your opponents. For spells, Narset's Reversal is a great include. After all, it steals your opponent's spell, but is nice enough to give it back to them to try and cast later. Spelljack costs much more, but can permanently, jack your opponent's spells. Spell Swindle is on the same line here. It's a kind of mana drain, but you get to use all of that mana as treasures whenever you want. Continuing this theme, Blatant Thievery, Mass Manipulation, and Mind's Dilation all constitute game enders in this deck. Ways to ensure you're stealing everything good from your opponents, from right here, right now, through to every turn they try and cast a spell. And while we're here, let's bulk up that pillow fort a bit. After all, you're going to be drawing a lot of hate from stealing all of this stuff. Let's add in Ghostly Prison and Norn's Annex to help ensure you don't get overrun by attackers. You don't have a lot of creatures in the list, and we aren't adding a lot of combat-ready new ones. We'll need to be careful, and we'll need to be on the defensive. If we're looking to add some higher dollar cards to the deck, I'd want to start with the lands. Let's get some better color producers in the list. Reflecting Pool, City of Brass, and Mana Confluence in particular. These can help you cast any card in your opponent's hands with Sen Triplets, even green or red cards. Mana Drain would be a good add to the deck since you're stealing your opponent's spells, mana, and making use of it for yourself. Even if it does only give you colorless mana, we've got plenty of artifacts in the list to cast. Opposition Agent would be decent and on theme too, stealing your opponent's tutors if you can flash it in response, allowing you to steal more stuff out of their libraries. And lastly, protecting Sen Triplets is crucial. You're basically shields down the turns you cast them, so adding in Fierce Guardianship, Force of Negation, or Pact of Negation will help you cast the triplets with 5 mana and still be able to protect them reliably. So with all of this in mind, let's take a look at the list. I've removed some of the Salt Factor cards to make the deck not as miserable to play against. Again, if that's your style, then that's just your style, but it's not mine. Play your deck how you want. Just don't be surprised if nobody wants to play against you a second time. We've replaced these salty cards with more ways to steal from your opponents. Permanents in play, spells from hand, or cards from libraries. Our game plan is to use our opponent's decks against them. That'll make them salty, but in a, hey, that's mine kind of way, not a, come on, that's not fun kind of way. The deck is now control heavy with pillow fort elements, aiming at winning not with our own threats, but with our opponents. It looks like fun, and now fun for everyone at the table instead of fun for no one at the table. I hope you like some of the tweaks to the list, Neptune. Please ensure to let us all know in the comments how you've managed to update your deck. And everyone else, let us know how you would continue to improve this list. But as always, until next time, good luck and have fun. And as always, thank you to our patrons for helping make this content possible. We couldn't do this without you. A special thanks to our Lodestone Golems, Ben Frayne, Sterling Langford, and Will Briggs, and our Metalwork Colossi, Austin Charlotte, Charles Olson, JD, and Matthew Chandler. Thank you, all of you.